We're going to take the first part, which is called the Doctrines of Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism. So as you know, this study manual was compiled by the priests of Nichiren Shoshu and the study department of the Soka Gakkai. Its aim being to make sure that all of us really understand the fundamentals of this practice and teaching. And up to now, we've dealt with the history of Nichiren Daishonin, and then the history of Nichiren Shoshu. And now we've come on to the doctrines themselves. So I think it's important to begin with to be clear what really is meant or covered by this word doctrine. Not to be confused with principles. Of course, there are many, many, many principles which form the basis of Nichiren Daishonin's teachings. Principles like Esho-funi, the oneness of man and his environment, Shikishin-funi, the inseparability of body and spirit, and so on. But that is not what is meant by the word doctrine. Doctrine is the absolute foundation on which the various principles are built in order to form a complete philosophy and practice. So really, this is the absolute rock or basis, the firm foundation of Nichiren Daishonin's teachings that we're concerned with tonight. The very essence of it, if you like. So, the word doctrine, as you know, can mean belief or fundamental teaching or dogma. Dogma is a horrible word because it can also mean an arrogant teaching. But it's a fundamental belief on which the whole of our practice is based. And of course, this fundamental belief can only be proved through practice. One can't prove it as a theory. You can only prove it through the practice. You validate it through the results you receive or achieve. So, for example, we can't produce an eyewitness who can say that Nichiren Daishonin was the original Buddha of Kuan-Ganzhou, past, the eternal past without beginning. It'd be great if we could, but of course we can't. But what we do know is that Nichiren Daishonin was definitely self-enlightened. We know that no one actually taught him his enlightenment, and that he found his own way to it innately in his life. And then, of course, we can prove the validity of what he taught through the actual proof that we get as a result of following the practice and teaching. So the doctrine is that fundamental base, which when you first hear about it is a belief, and later you prove to your total satisfaction. So the fundamental base of Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism is the Daigo Honzon of the Three Great Secret Laws. The Daigo Honzon of the Three Great Secret Laws. And most of this evening, this is what we're going to talk about. So I'll ask Bill to begin reading on page 2 from the start.
The Daigo Honzon, which includes the Three Great Secret Laws. The Three Great Secret Laws consist of the object of worship, Honzon, the high sanctuary, Kaidan, and the invocation of the Daimoku of true Buddhism. These form the core of Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism. The Essentials of the Lotus Sutra states in part, question, what is the secret law which Nagarjuna, Vasubandhu, Tiantai, and Dengyo left unrevealed during the 2,000 and odd years after the Buddha's death? Answer, it is the object of worship, the high sanctuary, and the invocation of the Daimoku, or the 5 characters of Myoho Renge Kyo of true Buddhism.
Thank you. So the Daiga Honzon, which includes the three great secret laws, is the essence of Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism, the foundation, the fundamental doctrine. And it is the Daiga Honzon of the three great secret laws from which, if you like, all teachings, all principles that are expounded by Nichiren Daishonin come. So probably the immediate question you have in your mind, having heard that first paragraph read, is why was it that this teaching, though it was understood by all the Buddhas of the past, was not actually expounded until Nichiren Daishonin appeared on this earth? And the answer to that, in very simple terms, is it wasn't the time. And later on in this lecture, we'll go into that in a good deal of detail. But suffice it to say at the moment that, as you know, Shakyamuni divided the time after his death into 500-year periods. The first two of those 500-year periods he called Shoho. And the second two of the 500-year periods he called Zoho. And the fifth 500-year period, that's to say 2,500 years after Shakyamuni was to die, he called the beginning of the age of Mappo. And he said that the age of Mappo would continue on for 10,000 years and on into eternity. So that in the whole period of Shoho and Zoho, after Shakyamuni had died, no one ever revealed the Gonzon of the three great secret laws. Shakyamuni himself had clearly indicated that the right time for propagating the true teachings of the Lotus Sutra, which, as you know, he taught in the last 8 years of his life, would be the age of Mappo. In a sutra called the Daijuku Sutra, he said the pure law, that was his Buddhism, Shakyamuni's teachings, would be lost in the fifth 500 period after his death. And in a chapter called the Yakur chapter of the Lotus Sutra, Shakyamuni said, in the fifth 500-year period after my death, accomplish worldwide Kosen Rufu of the Lotus Sutra and never allow its flow to cease. So Shakyamuni himself, as well as all the Buddhas that followed him in the periods of Shoho and Zoho, clearly understood that it was not the time to spread the teaching of the Gonzon of the three great secret laws, and that it must wait until the age of Mappo. As I say, we'll go into more reasons for that a bit later on in the lecture. So Mappo began round about the year 900 to 1000 AD. Still nobody knows exactly when Shakyamuni died. They only know roughly the bracket of years during which he passed away. So it's somewhere around 900 to 1000 AD, Shoten Zenjo. And the scholars are still arguing about that. Also in that paragraph, just to be clear right at the beginning, it says in the last line or so, the 5 characters of Myoho Renge Kyo, of true Buddhism. The 5 characters of Myoho Renge Kyo. So you understand that when you look at the Gonzon, you see 7 characters, which are Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And then under that, an 8th character, which is the name Nichiren. So the title of the Lotus Sutra, which was Myoho Renge Kyo, consists of 5 characters. So you often hear it talked about the invocation of the 5 characters or the 7 characters. That's Myoho Renge Kyo, the title of the sutra itself, plus Nam Mu, which is 2 characters, which makes 7. Right, Bill.
True Buddhism mentioned above means Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism, which is hidden in the depths of the essential teaching of the Lotus Sutra. The sanctuary of ordination, wherein the object of worship of true Buddhism is enshrined, is the high sanctuary of true Buddhism. To chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with faith in the object of worship of true Buddhism is the daimoku of true Buddhism. Therefore, the object of worship forms the base for both the high sanctuary and the daimoku. Therefore, the object of worship of true Buddhism is called the one great secret law.
Thank you. So the first few lines, the true Buddhism mentioned above means Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism. I think I explained in a previous lecture that the word true Buddhism derives from the fact that we practice the Buddhism of the true cause. Shakyamuni's Buddhism is known as the Buddhism of the true effect. That is to say, Shakyamuni's disciples and followers who attained Buddhahood had been practicing the bodhisattva austerities over lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, over eons and eons, Shakyamuni described it. So in other words, by the time they were born in the age of Shakyamuni, those who attained Buddhahood attained it because of those eons and eons of bodhisattva austerities and practice. Therefore, they reaped the harvest or the effect in the lifetime in which they finally attained Buddhahood. On the contrary, Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism, which is specifically for this age, for the age of Mappo, consists of both the beginning and the ultimate aim. That is to say, the seed is sown in this lifetime, and the harvest is reaped in the same lifetime. In other words, we are shakabuku'd by someone, and in that process, the seed of Buddhahood is sown into us. And through the power of the practice of Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism, which is specifically necessary for this age, we can reap the full harvest, in other words, attain Buddhahood in this lifetime. So it's the Buddhism of the true cause. The cause is made in this life to attain Buddhahood in this life, whereas Shakyamuni were reaping the effect of eons of practice. I'll go into that in more detail too a bit later. It's also the Buddhism of this age of Mappo. This is also why it's called true Buddhism, the true Buddhism for this age, whereas Shakyamuni's Buddhism was for previous ages. This is another reason for calling it true Buddhism. So true Buddhism isn't some sort of arrogant statement saying that all other Buddhisms are false. Of course not. Shakyamuni's Buddhism was essential in that age. Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism is essential for this age. It is the true Buddhism for this age. So, Nichiren Daishonin was able to penetrate the depths of the Lotus Sutra and in his wisdom extract, if you like, the core or kernel of it, the very essence of it, which was the Gohonzon of the three great secret laws. Other Buddhas understood that. Of course they did. They were enlightened. But they knew that it wasn't the time for the Gohonzon of the secret laws to be taught in their age. So there are many quotations showing these previous Buddhas' feelings about this matter. I think it was Dengyo, who was in the age of Zoho, a Buddha in the age of Zoho, who said, "Oh, if I could only have been born in Mappo." And Tiantai as well, and many others who were born in Zoho or Shoho, exclaimed about their desire to be born in the age of Mappo when they could teach the very essence of the Lotus Sutra itself. So Nichiren Daishonin's supreme mission, the whole purpose of his birth, was to explain this teaching. Shakyamuni had said in his own lifetime that a Buddha would appear to teach the people. Nichiren Daishonin appeared with that supreme purpose. We also, each one of us, have a supreme purpose in our lives, which is to spread the teaching. That is our supreme purpose as bodhisattvas of the earth. Nichiren Daishonin had the supreme purpose of beginning it all, the person to take the first step. So, in the beginning of that paragraph, or rather the first paragraph, Nichiren Daishonin explains what the three great secret laws are. That is to say, the object of worship, or honzon, the high sanctuary, or kaidan, and the invocation of the daimoku of Nammyoho Renge Kyo. So let's have a look at these three great secret laws. Secret only because they had been known previously solely to the Buddhas. Until Nichiren Daishonin's time, no one had taught it. Therefore, they had remained secret in the wisdom of the Buddhas who had existed previously. So first of all, the sanctuary of ordination, or kaidan, sanctuary of ordination. Sometimes it's translated as ordination platform. So this was in traditional or earlier Buddhism, this was the place or platform before the main object of worship on which the priests stood when they were being ordained. It was on this platform, the ordination platform, that they accepted the precepts and promised to fulfill them throughout their lifetime. That is how that word kaidan or sanctuary was first used. The sanctuary of ordination, or the ordination platform. So it was in the presence of the object of worship that they took their vows and promised to keep them forever. So in the same way, when we chant to our Gohonzon, we are on the ordination platform. The sanctuary of our Gohonzon is the Butsudan and the area in which we sit or kneel. So through the very process of kneeling or sitting down and chanting Nammyoho Renge Kyo to our Gohonzon, we are accepting the precepts, aren't we? The very fact we chant Nammyoho Renge Kyo to the Gohonzon is accepting the one and only precept which Nichiren Daishonin ever taught, the one and only precept of this whole religion of Nichiren Shoshu Buddhism. Of course, far beyond our homes, there is the formal high sanctuary. The formal high sanctuary for the world, that is to say, which is Shohondo in the grounds of the head temple at Taiseikichi. So there, people come from all over the world. They enter Shohondo and chant Daimoku to the Daigohonzon. They enter the sanctuary for ordination. And through the very process of making that pilgrimage and chanting Daimoku to the Daigohonzon, they are fulfilling or accepting the precepts and carrying them out in the terms of the way we practice today. Likewise, of course, there is the Gohonzon for Europe at our center at Tretz. This is the place we go to when we want to formally, if you like, make our determinations for the Kosen Rufu of Europe. So again, we enter that sanctuary and accept the precepts once again and make our determinations whilst we chant Daimoku. Then you can come to Richmond, where the Gohonzon of the United Kingdom is. Again, Richmond is the sanctuary where we renew our acceptance of the precepts. And likewise, as I said at the beginning, there is the sanctuary in your own home, where twice a day, if you're practicing regularly, you, as it were, formally indicate again your acceptance of the precepts and your determination to fulfill them. So that is the significance of the kaidan, or high sanctuary. The object of worship, or the object of devotion, that is to say the Daigahonzan, is the prime point of the three great secret laws. Without the Daigahonzan, there'd be no point in having a sanctuary, would there? Without your Gahonzan in your room, you couldn't say you wouldn't have a Butsudan there. And of course, we direct our Daimoku to the Gahonzan. So in all senses, the Gahonzan itself is the prime point of this practice, isn't it? So of course, it's possible to chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo without a Gahonzan, and we all have done it, may still be doing it when we first joined. But that is only making an opening for you could chant Daimoku without the Gahonzan, and certainly it will bring conspicuous benefit. But it reaches a point where those benefits become, because without the Gahonzan, you cannot begin to change your karma. The whole purpose of the Gahonzan is so that you can rid yourself of the unhappy elements of your karma and therefore make full use of the benefits which flow into your life. It's not much good getting benefits if tomorrow or next year you're going to get desperately ill and shorten your life by 40 years. So in the beautiful roundness which the teachings of Nichiren Daishonin are, we receive the Gahonzan so that we can begin to change our karma or do our human revolution, so that we can gain the utmost and fullest value from the benefits that will flow into us. So the Daigahonzan, or the Gahonzan in our house, is the prime point. So, through chanting Gahonzan, sending our Daimoku towards, whether we think about it or not, what we're desiring is to fuse, isn't it, with the law of the universe. We know that that law is represented on the Gahonzan. And we desire to fuse our lives with it, or as we often say, put ourselves in rhythm. And likewise, on that Gahonzan, we are told is Nichiren Daishonin's life. When he inscribed the Gahonzan, he said, I am inscribing my life in Sumi ink. So in addition to wanting to put ourselves in rhythm with that law, we know that if we're going to have to do that, we're going to be able to, we have to achieve a life state equivalent to Nichiren Daishonin. Therefore, the Gahonzan is also viewed from the point of view of the person. If you can't look at the Gahonzan from the point of view of the person, then it would be very difficult. If you only look at the law, that's a very intangible thing and difficult to really, as I say, relate to yourself. But if you look at the Gahonzan from the aspect of the person, who is a human being called Nichiren, albeit an enlightened one, then the Gahonzan is immensely meaningful, more and more meaningful the more you consider it in that way. In other words, the Gohonzon becomes like a living thing, a living representation of the state of life that was the Buddha of Mappo Nichiren Daishonin. And as I often say, it's through that constant practice, as you meditate or look at the Gohonzon, that causes you to gradually bring your life state to the same state as Nichiren Daishonin's. Not to become the same as Nichiren Daishonin, but to achieve the same life state as him. So the Gohonzon, in every sense, is the prime point. And at the end of that paragraph, it says, therefore, the object of worship forms the base for both the high sanctuary and the daimoku. Therefore, the object of worship of true Buddhism is called the one great secret law. The prime point, which contains all three secret laws, is the Daigohonzon enshrined at the head temple Taisekiji. And in its turn, at other levels, is the Gohonzon that we have in our own homes. And there is no difference in the power of either. Each has totally the same power. Once someone described it as Taisekiji being the powerhouse. Places like Tretz and other temples and community centers being like sub-powerhouses for neighborhoods and communities. And the Gohonzon which we have in our house being like an electric light bulb to light our own lives and families. But the power is the same, whether it's from the Daigohonzon or the Gohonzons in our own sitting room. Thank you, Bill.
The three great secret laws correspond to the three types of learning, known as precept, meditation, and wisdom. These are considered to cover all aspects of Buddhist doctrine and practice. Precept originally refers to the prevention of wrong and the halting of evil. Meditation indicates focusing one's mind and keeping tranquil. Wisdom signifies that with which one breaks down one's illusion and realizes the truth. In respective comparison, the object of worship of true Buddhism is equivalent to meditation, which the Lotus Sutra defines to be as infinite and stable as the heavens. The high sanctuary of true Buddhism correlates to the infinite and stable precept, and the daimoku of true Buddhism parallels the infinite and stable wisdom.
Thank you. So this is a very interesting point, that in his wisdom, Nichiren Daishonin chose, in expressing the theory of the three great secret laws, to base it on the ancient Buddhist principle of the three types of learning, as you see: precept, meditation, and wisdom. So when Shohondo was built, or when you go out and buy your Butsudan, this is accepting the precept to chant and practice Nichiren Daishonin's teaching. Buying your Butsudan is like in itself a formal acceptance, isn't it? That you're going to practice. By taking that formal step, you are also fulfilling the type of learning known as precept. That is to say, you are taking a step which will halt evil in your life and overcome wrong or bad causes. And then, having got your Butsudan, you enshrine it. You're establishing, aren't you, the correct object of worship on which to focus your practice. Therefore, the establishment of the Gohonzon is equivalent to the principle of meditation, the point upon which you focus your mind. And through placing yourself in that sanctuary and chanting Daimoku to the Gohonzon, you are activating infinite wisdom, which is the third of those three principles. If any of those principles, precept, meditation, and wisdom, had been missed out, then there'd be something wrong with the practice and we wouldn't get benefit. And all these are described as infinite and stable. This is how, in its difficult to understand way, the Gohonzon was described in the Lotus Sutra as infinite and stable. So we said earlier on that the Gohonzon is the base for all three secret laws. You can call the Gohonzon the one great secret law. So if the Gohonzon itself is absolute and unchanging, which we know it is, in other words, infinite and stable, then inevitably the sanctuary itself will be infinite and stable. And the wisdom that arises in your life through chanting will also be infinite and stable. So again, everything hinges on the prime point of the Gohonzon. Of course, in many Gosho, Nichiren Daishonin emphasized the need for the correct object of worship. And he pointed out how mankind has suffered through not having the right object of worship. That object of worship must be stable, absolute, unchanging, and infinite. And then everything that you do when you practice to it, and indeed the very environment in which that Gohonzon is situated, will also be infinite and stable. So putting that into personal terms, through our practice to the infinite and stable Gohonzon, we achieve total stability and infinite power in our own lives, and we reflect that into our environment, which also becomes infinite and stable. So these things are happening when we chant Daimoku to our Gohonzon. So now at this point, I think it might be helpful to have a look at a diagram we drew to explain what we've said so far. Bill, could you just take that? So it's called the S of three great secret laws. The first great secret law, Daishonin. And you remember that represents the type of learning known as meditation, those three types of learning. The point upon which you focus your mind. And secondly, the second law, Daimoku. In this case, it doesn't matter which order you take them. Daimoku, which represents the type of learning known as wisdom. Through chanting Daimoku to the Gohonzon, you activate wisdom in your life. And then at the base, or if you like, all the way around the edge of this diagram here, is the high sanctuary or kaidan, which represents the precept. The fact that you commit yourself to buying your butsudan and sitting down and chanting Daimoku is accepting the precept. Don't worry about this here for the moment. We'll come to that in a moment. So I hope that makes it quite clear how the three great secret laws are related to the three types of learning, and how through that the whole blends into one practice, one wisdom, and great benefit. Okay, can you read on, Bill?
Nichiren Daishonin applied these three types of learning in order to manifest the mystic law, the perfect fusion of Kyo objective reality, and chi, subjective wisdom, as the object of worship, the high sanctuary, and the daimoku of true Buddhism, so that all people in the latter day of the law could attain enlightenment in this life.
The whole purpose of this practice of the three great secret laws is that we should achieve what is known as Kyochi Myogo with the Gohonzon. Kyochi Myogo is the fusion of our subjective wisdom with objective reality. That is to say, the objective reality of the Gohonzon. The Gohonzon is the law of the universe. It is also life in the Buddha state. We wish to fuse our subjective wisdom through chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo with the Buddha state which exists in all the universe and which is embodied in the object of devotion called the Gohonzon. That is the whole aim and purpose of what we're doing, to achieve Kyo-chi Myogo. So it's through applying three great secret laws to our lives, through those three types of learning, of precept, meditation, and wisdom, that we can begin to live more and more in the Buddha state, perfectly fused with the Buddha state embodied in the Gohonzon, which in turn means, of course, that we will be perfectly fused with the Buddha state in all things in our environment and all people or life in that environment. This is because the Gohonzon is absolute and unchanging, infinite and stable and perfect. Therefore, through every day, twice a day, coming back to that Gohonzon, we are constantly renewing or refreshing our relationship with it. We are constantly re-establishing Kyochi Myogo, the fusion of our Buddha state activated through chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo with the Buddha state embodied in the Gohonzon, and therefore the Buddha state in all things. So again, on the diagram, as you can see, down the side, I've just tried to explain that. So the Dai Gohonzon is Kyo, the object, the objective reality. And at the bottom there, by the side of us, is Chi. Us, me, with my subjective wisdom, you with your subjective wisdom, activated through chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. And the two become fused, or myogo. And this is the mystic law at work. The fusion of Kyo and Chi. This is how you get benefit. This is how you overcome weaknesses in your life. Through the fusion of you with your subjective wisdom and the object called the Gohonzon. So in other words, when you chant the Gohonzon, the effect flows back into you, enabling you to change the weak areas of your life and overcome unhappy karma. And in the other respect, it flows outwards into your entire environment, far beyond even the imagination can visualize. Out far into the universe. So, of course, this is extremely difficult to believe. And this is why it's called the mystic law. But in fact, you prove it continuously from the time you first begin to chant. If you relate it to other worlds, we all know that animality breeds animality from our environment. Anger breeds anger. Greed breeds greed. Our environment reflects exactly our state. If we cower before someone, then 9 cases out of 10, they'll bully us. Animality in me draws out animality from him or her. Same way with greed, same way with anger, same way with every basic life state. So this incredible, wonderful, I was going to say invention of Nichiren Daishonin places before us an object which is in the state of Buddha. And through relating to that, it reflects back into our life, and then, of course, the environment reflects Buddha to us. Gradually, we realize our environment working with us, not against us. So we change both our inner life and the environment that surrounds us. And of course, through the happiness that we gradually feel in our lives, we reflect happiness in everything in that environment. Okay, Bill?
In the last paragraph, on the 3 great secret laws states, "It is because the Lotus Sutra contains the 3 great secret laws that all the Buddhas take it as the reason for their advent. Thus, the Lotus Sutra is supreme among all the teachings because it contains the 3 great secret laws. It follows that the innumerable teachings of all Buddhas in the 3 existences of life, including Shakyamuni Buddha, are ultimately contained in the 3 great secret laws, and further in the object of worship of true Buddhism, the 1 great secret law. In conclusion, we may say that the object of worship, including the 3 great secret laws, the Daigo Honzon of the high sanctuary of true Buddhism, is the essence of Buddhism."
So we studied earlier the reason why the Daigo Honzon of the 3 great secret laws, though it was known to all Buddhas, wasn't taught until Nichiren Daishonin appeared in order to do so.